What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 132 of the Noizze Podcast, part of the Noizze Podcast Network, and sponsored by Satanic Co. I'm your host, your boy, Chris Pugh, and I'm joined, as ever, by my very good friend and mystical cynical himself, Samuel Lewis. We're available anywhere you get your podcasts: YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you watch or listen, we will be there. The best way to support us is by liking/subscribing, depending on whichever service you are using, and you can follow us on Twitter at Noizze Podcast. We're going to start with Spanish love songs. New record is called Noizze, out on August 25th via Pure Noise Records. It's the Californian rock band's fourth album and the follow-up to 2020 superb Brave Faces, Everyone. A couple of things I want to go over, really, Sam, before we start discussing the record in full detail. Is this your first experience of Spanish love songs? No, they supported the Menzingers when we went to watch them in London. So is this your first experience of them on record?
I've listened to a couple of songs on record, but as a start to finish album experience, yes.
So with Brave Faces Everyone in 2020, the first time I heard it, I thought, oh, I really like this. And it was one of those albums that continued to grow on me as the year progressed, and by the end of the year and throughout our time since, oh god, this album is great. Like it's fragile, and it's kind of pessimistic and nihilistic, but it writes itself in an optimistic fashion. There's optimistic tonality in this incredible pessimism lyrically, which I found really, really enthralling, and I really got into them, and kind of a symbol of how great Spanish love songs are. Our co-best friend Leon, I dragged him with me to see Spanish love songs at Slam Dunk this year. And I was like, "You'll really like these, dude. I swear to you, like you're gonna really love them." And he turned to me after, and he was like, "They were great. Like they were so good. I'm gonna listen to what's the name of the latest album? I'm gonna listen to it on the way home." So Spanish love songs, they're a band that I've got quite an affinity towards. So it's hard for me to not be biased doing this review. So I think it's only fair that I kind of let you lead, really, because, and I think the same for Holding Absence when we review that later as well, because I already love Spanish love songs and Holding Absence so much. It's kind of like, if you do the thing you usually do, I'm going to really like it. So it's hard for me to be objective. I can see you as someone who definitely would be objective on Spanish love songs, because they're not the kind of band that I would recommend for you. I've got a question for you that I'd like you to answer before you lead off into your thoughts. I love how Spanish love songs write their music, in the sense of they will open with sometimes like a solemn, almost like misanthropic, sometimes instrumental opening, and then explode into this vibrancy and color in the chorus. And that is a trope that Spanish love songs have used since I have listened to them. Do you find it tiresome?
It wore a little thin near the end of the album, but overall,
I thought it might
no.
for you. Okay, good, great. In that case, dude, off you go, and the floor is yours. What are your thoughts? No joy. Oh
I
god,
really like.
he cleared his throat first. That's usually not a good sign. I'm
No,
trepidatious now.
no, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. I really like this. Um,
Amazing. Let's go.
so isn't this what you wanted from Teenage Wrist 2 weeks ago?
It's ironic that you would say that, because that's also what I wrote for the Holding Absence album as well. But yeah, this is exactly what I wanted Teenage Wrist to do 2 weeks ago. Literally this thing. But yeah, continue.
So my first encounter with Spanish love songs was thinking that they were contributing to maybe the most obnoxious crowd of people I'd ever been a part of at that Menzinger show, and I have internally blamed them for that kind of person for about 3 years, and it's not their fault.
Doesn't like you.
I know, completely irrational hatred. And it's not at all their fault. I've never met a single member of Spanish love songs or done anything remote to. I've never interviewed them, anything like that. I was just looking around London in February thinking, I hate everyone in this room, and I think you're the reason. And since then, I've tried to avoid them because I just assumed that I wouldn't really like them that much. I was wrong. Happy to say that. This is a great album, and reminds me of some of the best alternative post rock music I've heard in the last 10 to 15 years from the likes of Gaslight Anthem and the Menzingers. And that makes a lot of sense why they're supporting the latter band as recently as 3 years ago. So I want to start there. I really enjoyed the balance that they strike between the sort of open-hearted, whimsical, and sometimes incredibly satirical and cynical lyric content, and then with just a really haunting clean guitar and electronic drum beat in the background that seems to allow a nice sort of conflict of sounds for the band. The moment that this band opened with Lifers, the sort of spoken language open, there's a lovely little riff that reminded me of like Dakota by Stereophonics when it immediately kicked in. With that kind
yeah,
of
that's
like
a nice shape, man.
that kind of backdrop, that kind of electronic buzz sound that they seem to
Yeah,
create.
that's nice.
And
That's
the
nice.
first thing I noticed with his voice quivers and quavers, it's not a strong voice. It seems deliberately designed to sort of emphasize the vulnerability of what he's saying. And I actually think that
Yeah,
really is nice. And I think that gives it a kind of authenticity and a kind of a life where I don't actually feel that it's contrived. It gives it a sense of personality that I automatically sort of felt an affinity towards listening to. I enjoy the clean sound with the chords shifting in behind, and it allows the chorus to loop. And I'm going to get on more in that style when we talk to Hold an Absence later. But Spanish love songs have done a really nice job of slightly varying the music behind that allows that chorus to sort of continue. And I was just immediately enjoying the fact that this, it doesn't particularly ask you to work hard, but at the same time, it's a really fun, enjoyable opening that feels clever and introspective and emotive without feeling like overtly dramatic or melodramatic. Like sometimes I'll listen to the songs that are deliberately designed to be the quote unquote sad ballads, and I'll just roll my eyes because it feels like a moment in a theatrical production where the blue light comes down and I'm supposed to feel something because you've told me to. And whereas this actually feels quite a natural, and I enjoy that. I don't feel like I'm being sort of emotionally manipulated, as I do with some other bands. When we came into sort of Pendulum, I don't want to go through every track because otherwise we'll be here for an hour and a half. That was another example of the kind of music that I really enjoyed here. It's a lovely little picking riff. The halftime drum beat was well founded. There's that gorgeous echoey clean behind. And the repetition of that I can't find joy line I thought was really nice, and it allowed that to continue as they transition behind it. What I tend to spot more often is that it's a clever album from a songwriting construction standpoint where they're able to fit different pieces together quite smoothly while maintaining this introspective nature. I just want to give that as an opening overview, but I was pleasantly surprised to say the least, and based on this, I really like this band.
I'm delighted to hear that. I was slightly nervous coming into this as to how you would find this band, because the criticism, and there's not a lot of criticism for Spanish love songs because they're for the people who are aware of them, they're a very well loved band. At Slam Dunk when I saw them last, just this swathe of people, me included, are just singing a heart out to every lyric. You know, the people that love Spanish love songs absolutely adore them because they really find an affinity to lyrical content and to the way they write their music. But the criticisms that I have heard on some podcasts and from some critics has been that the constant pessimism lyrically does become jarring and difficult to listen to. And Dylan Slocum, the vocalist, some people find his vocal style difficult to follow along with because of the constant cracking and the constant sounding like he's about to break down. Now that's not something I've ever discovered, and I love Dylan as a vocalist, but I thought for yourself you might find gripes with the way that Spanish love songs write their music, but I'm really, really happy that you don't, because I'm completely with you. The way, see, with Spanish love songs, it's really clever because the lyrics often juxtapose the instrumentation, especially in the choruses. Like the Spanish love songs, I spend like 90 seconds talking about like how desperate this person is to die, and then there'll be this really nice, clean riff in the chorus that somehow puts like a beaming smile on your face, even though for the past like 80 seconds it's nothing but like nihilism, pessimism, and cynicism. It's really interesting how they managed to pull it off every single time. I mean, again, some of the lyrics on this album, middle of nine, and I'm gonna miss everything. Two beautiful songs, but again, like lyrically, they are quite damning. Lyrics like "This life ain't for choosing, now happiness is coming." And I think on "I'm gonna miss everything," like every person I'm where I'm gonna be, I'm gonna miss everything. But on both of those songs, they somehow blend this real sadness and solemn tonality, and then they move it into this chorus that is incredibly infectious and somehow fun to listen to, despite the lyrical content. A lot of this record has this kind of 80s pop tone synth that runs through the choruses, which is really, really superb. As I listened to Exit Bags, I was curious as to what you were thinking at that point in the record, Exit Bags, because by then the album has ran that trope through a few times. You mentioned in your opening that you've began to find it slightly tiresome towards the end. For songs like Exit Bags and Mutable, was it that point where you were almost like dropping out of the record, or you just noticed that the same trope had been pulled a couple of times?
A little bit of the latter. I off mutable more than Exit Bags was where I started spotting that. Okay, it needs a third gear. It felt Mutable felt like like they were just following a blueprint of what a classic indie ballad would sound like. It's musically simple. It was easy going. There was enough pathos and hope provided by the cadence of the vocals and stuff like that, but it needed an extra thing to go to. I actually really liked Exit Bags as a song in and of itself because the picking riff I thought was gorgeous.
Yeah, I love Exit Bags.
Combining that with, I can't emphasize enough that I listened to this and I felt that there was a real genuine emotion being expressed rather than a contrived one. And I don't mind the continuation of that feeling if I get the impression that that's actually how the vocalist feels and that's actually the kind of thing that the band want to convey. Whereas sort of putting on the sad clown thing, eventually that runs out because it isn't genuine, and that it becomes easy to spot. That's why bands become repetitive, because they're just pressing the angry button, but they don't actually write and play with any kind of aggression. I would say where it sort of felt like a little bit sort of off the boil a touch was sort of like the end of Here You Are. I did roll my eyes when he kept saying "put your trauma on me." It just felt like sort of Twitter AI was filling out the rest of the chorus there a little bit. But other than that, I was overwhelmingly impressed with the continuing nature of the lyricism and its ability to not feel overtly repetitive, because the music around it was changing and the music around it was befitting. And like, for example, look at Raptor Chaser, right? Like, there's a semi-distorted guitar to open that, nice clean to follow. There's like synth in the backdrop, and every time they seem to have a good awareness of, right, now it's time to sort of smoothly transition to a slightly different style, a slightly different shade, and that will allow the lyrics not to feel so monosyllabic or monothematic or whatever it might be, to sort of disinterest the reader, because they shouldn't feel any responsibility to write a happy song because their audience gets bored of the lyrics. I rarely listen to lyrics as a listener as well, personally. I'm much more of a encompassing musical kind of listener anyway. I couldn't care less what he's singing about, frankly, as long as it works within the framework of the song. And I do. And I think there's enough humor in there. There's enough satire in there, actually. And some of the metaphors are lovely. In terms of what he was talking about. Where am I going? Where I really enjoyed the metaphors in Exit Bags, where he talks about like she turned to salt within my hands and all that type of stuff. I thought that was really clever,
Sick.
really smart. So who cares, to be honest, because the music is good, the songs are good, the lyrics are good, the lyrics are smart, and they suit the pathos of the music as well, and they blend it nicely. I was really impressed with this, and it felt like a real album of real feeling. I got no issue with that whatsoever.
Glad you mentioned Raptor Chaser. because I love that song. And they do pull a similar trope where it's melancholic opening that explodes into colour and vibrancy in the chorus, but I don't get tired of it because they're so good at doing it. The chorus on Raptor Chaser could be like a Pet Shop Boys number. It's got that high piercing keyboard and scaling vocal chords from Dylan. It's like this superb heart on the sleeve track that's kind of begging to be heard on a night in solitude, but would equally be fitting to close a set surrounded by strobe lights. I really love Raptor Chaser. But just as we close out the review, with the final song, Re-Emerging Signs of the Apocalypse, there are two things that I really love about Spanish love songs. One of them I've mentioned already, the way that the cynical lyrics give way to this optimistic instrumentation that somehow makes you feel good, even though the lyrical content's like really, really dark. The other thing that I adore about Spanish love songs is Dylan Slocum, the vocalist. He's got this ability to make his lyrics seem as if he's telling them to you in your living room. It's like storytelling. Like I really, I don't know whether you, I think based off what you said, I don't think you did, but like we got the lyric sheet with this record, and I was like following along, and it was hard to listen to the music really because I was like really entrenched in like the storytelling that Dylan performs in every song. And both of those things that I said I love about Spanish love songs are turned up to 11 on Re-Emerging Signs of the Apocalypse. The song is outstanding. Literally everything for a Spanish love songs fan listening to this, every single thing you enjoy Spanish love songs doing, they do it the best they've ever done on Re-Emerging Signs of the Apocalypse. Absolutely adore that album. I almost like don't want to talk too much about it. Like I want people to go in blind and listen to it without knowing much. It's so good, that song. I cannot say enough about it. It's absolutely phenomenal. As we get into the end here, Sam, I think this is a great Spanish love songs album. That's, I wouldn't say it's quite as good as Brave Faces Everyone for my money, but it's the furthest thing there could be from a letdown. I'll be curious to see exactly how much growth it gives them, because I feel like it's a record that will undeniably hit the hardest with those that are already in touch with the band's style and shtick. But judging on how welcoming you found it as a newcomer, maybe this could be like a huge moment of growth for the band. I mean, I'd love it to be so. They're amazing. I adore Spanish love songs. But how do you feel about this in general as we close off?
I think it's a great album. It's a great album. I think it'll be a strong consideration for one of the alternative rock albums of the year within its genre, alongside I assume the band that we're going to be reviewing next. I imagine they're up there as well. And I think, yeah, I wouldn't consider myself necessarily the benchmark of new listeners that are going to be sort of Spanish love songs necessarily aiming for. If anything, they're probably annoyed that I like them. But in terms of what I experienced with the music, I found it extraordinarily engaging and compelling. I found it really heartfelt, and at the same time, there was enough of an authenticity to find it relatively wholesome. There are 2 or 3 big singles on this. Obviously, we've not talked about them in length as is tradition, but Clean Up Crew is enough, I think, to sort of win it to win a fan over. I also like Marvel a great deal as well, which is another single off this album. So I was impressed with those. I don't see any reason why you can't sit somebody down who enjoys Menzinger's Gaslight Anthem, Teenage Wrist, Brian Fallon, those kind of artists, and say, hey, I think you'd also enjoy this, because I consider myself in that first group and I also enjoyed this. And again, I went in with the expectations that I thought maybe I wouldn't, and maybe this is something that I'm not supposed to be engaging with necessarily. I'm not really the catchment area of what the band are sort of coming out from. I'm not really the demographic that they should be focused on. But I enjoyed it nonetheless. Maybe it's because I'm 30 now, so I find their pathos more appealing and realistic. But I enjoy this album, and it's one of the better albums we've reviewed this year from my perspective.
So happy you enjoy this. So happy you enjoy this. Yeah, superb record. Adore Spanish love songs. They've done everything I wanted them to do. No Joy is out on August 25th via Pure Noise Records. If you're already a Spanish love songs fan, you literally cannot miss it. If you're not a Spanish love songs fan yet, there's a great chance you will be after hearing this superb record. The best way to support us is by liking / subscribing, depending on whichever service you use. You can follow us on Twitter at Noizze Podcast. Remember to support Satanic Co, who are our sponsors. Me and Sam are going to be back in around about 2 weeks' time. We talk about new albums from Polaris and Silosis. What an episode that's going to be. Very excited for that one. And remember, you can support us by liking / subscribing / following, depending on whichever service you use. Thank you very much for listening. We really appreciate your time and your attention. We're back in 2 weeks' time. We'll see you then. Bye.